So my name is Melanie. I work for Electrolux for almost 7 years. Electrolux, my base is São Paulo, Brazil. In Electrolux Brazil, we are the only one trading B2C. So it's the only headquarter that is actually selling the 3 divisions, which is small appliance, vacuum cleaners, and consumables in one only e-commerce website. We started with this project almost 5 years ago. We now represent almost 5 to 6% of the total net income of Electrolux Brazil. So we are almost the 6th biggest client, let's say so, from Electrolux Brazil. So we here Electrolux, you guys have Zanussi and AEG as a brand.
That's the brand.
Yeah.
But it's well known. Yeah. Okay. So
my name is Juan Martín Romero. I work in Frávega. It's an electronic retailer from Argentina. We also own a bank because we have a financial also business, and 2 factories where we produce LEDs or cell phones or air conditioners. So in Frávega it's an electronic that has 115 branches all over the country, and it's a business of more than $1 billion per year. And as an example of our business, in e-commerce is more than 12 to 13% of our total business, and we expect, for example, in Cyber Monday to sell 60,000 cells in only 2 days. So, kind of a challenge.
a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Hello. So my name is Claudia Elisa Soares. I'm the CEO of the FINAC operation in Brazil. FINAC is a multinational, a French multinational company. It's the global leader in technological, culture, and entertainment, pleasure products. FINAC exists for 60 years, and now it is in Brazil for 17 years. We in Brazil, we operate with 12 stores, plus our online, that in fact, thinking of a way to assess our clients, our online business is in fact our biggest store. It represents 23% of our business in FINAC Brazil, due to the high penetration that we have of use of internet in Brazil. Maybe later on we'll give some more data about it. And from this 23% of our business, 32% we do pick-up store. This is an operation we started in July 2015 in the country. So very similar numbers to the headquarters we have in France.
Okay, fantastic.
Hi, everyone. My name is Luciano. I work for Boticário Group, that is a cosmetic company in Brazil. This is the world's biggest franchise company for cosmetics. We operate in the 3 different channels in Brazil. We have more than almost 4,000 stores in Brazil, and direct sales also, and in e-commerce. I'm in charge for the e-commerce operations of our 4 brands that we have e-commerce in Brazil. And we have e-commerce, we have companies in other 9 countries. In Europe, we have established in Portugal. We have 50 stores there, and an e-commerce that sells for every Europe.
Super. Okay. Just thought it would be worthwhile talking about the width and size of some of the marketplaces we're talking about. So, Juan, would you just like to talk about Argentina and some of the big numbers and whatever that consumers and stuff?
Yeah, sure. Before we start, I would like to share some information about the Latin American market and the size and which are the biggest countries in this market. So, the Latin American market is expected to be one of the fastest growing markets of e-commerce. It is a market that size now $60 to $65 billion per year, and is expected to be in a couple of years $85 billion. So it's a huge opportunity. I mean, Latin America is a huge opportunity for all countries that want to export their products or services. But of course, also it's a fast growing, but also the connectivity is very high. We have 400 million people connected to the internet, especially through smartphones, but also through desktops and cell phones. Shoppers online are 100 million, so you have 100 million shoppers online in Latin America. Still, you have 400 million connected, but 100 million shopping in e-commerce. So of course, there's also a big opportunity to grow that sales. But when we talk about Latin America, it's, we can talk about numbers in Latin America, but the reality is when you talk about Latin America, you need to talk about the countries, and you need to have a country strategy. Because in Latin America, you don't have free trading. So each country has its own complexity, its own taxes, its own customs, restriction, imports. So once you start talking about Latin America, it's very important. You can have a strategy in Latin America, but it's very important to understand what will be your strategy in the countries of Latin America.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm going to make a small brief of which are the biggest countries. Of course, Brazil. Brazil holds almost 50% of the e-commerce revenue in Latin America, so it's the biggest country, and they will talk a little bit about Brazil figures. After Brazil, you have Mexico. Mexico, it's a big country, but it's one of the least developed of Latin America. It is almost 12 to 13% of the total Latin America e-commerce revenue, but still has the maturity is still quite low. So they have, for example, the Cyber Monday, they started 2 years ago. The e-commerce chamber also started 2 years ago. And one of the main things that they have is they have low credit card penetration. They have a lot of debit cards, but credit card is still very low. And for example, 30 to 40% of the trade that happens in e-commerce, it's cash. So you need to go pay, and then you can return deliver the product. So that is one of the barriers for Mexico, and even Amazon, that's now playing a big part in Mexico, has their own prepaid card, for example, for shopping in Mexico. So Mexico also a big country, but still a lot of place to develop. After Mexico, you can find Argentina. Argentina holds like 9% of the e-commerce of the region, but the fastest growing, or the expected fastest growing for the next couple of years. So a big opportunity. They expect Argentina to be more than 13% of the total e-commerce for the region. So you have a strong opportunity, but also with some import restrictions that you need to address. After that, you have Chile, that is a mature country, but with a smaller population, Colombia, and maybe Peru. So once you start talking about Latin America, it's very important to understand that there's not a lot of free commerce between countries. Only 1% of the cross-border business is within Latin American countries, only 1%. And there's then another 8% from USA and China. So one of the things that we want to remark here is Latin America is a huge opportunity for everybody, but you need to understand each country locally. And if you want to operate in Latin America, it's important to address the operation locally, or with, of course, with local partners that understand their business in each country.
Yeah, that's a massive point, isn't it? We often are, maybe because of our European heritage, looking at markets and kind of thinking, well, if I'm there, if I'm in the UK, I can reach Germany, I can reach whatever. And although there is some localization going on, it's almost, as you're saying, very distinct between different countries. So you do need to get your strategy right. So would you like to talk maybe about Brazil and some of the figures
some
around
figures,
there. Yeah.
some figures of Brazil. So we're talking about Latin America, like he mentioned, Juan. Brazil is a huge country, huge distances, what makes, I would say, the logistic challenge very big. Luciano is going to talk a bit about it. And these 200 million inhabitants, we have a GDP of 5.6 trillion reais. Divide by 4, just to make it easier to convert to pounds, so 1.4 trillion pounds of annual GDP. But still a lot to grow in terms of per capita annual turnover or annual income. We're talking about 8,000 pounds per capita income per year. Yeah. So a lot to grow if we compare to other countries here in Europe where we see 35, 37, like in France, for example, 1,000 euros is annual per capita income. At the same time, what is good is since we have those big distances, I would say that the penetration of the internet grew a lot. So if we analyze how many people, this is an information, 40 million people did at least one purchase in the internet online in 2015. And we are talking about a market that is growing at the pace in terms of retail of 15, 16% year after year. That's the growth of 2015, while physical stores, they grew 1 to 2%. So whatever is the company in retail in Brazil that is with not a strong strategy in terms of e-commerce, it's going to fail. It's not going to work very well. And depending on the categories you sell, you see the penetration of the use of e-commerce in a very important way. So for example, in electronics, nowadays in Brazil, about 30% of all the purchases of consumers are online. And from this amount, 12% already in mobile. So, and we are talking about a penetration in total consumption of Brazil that is followed. 3.3% of the total consumption in retail was done in e-commerce. So can you imagine 3.3 on average? In electronics, 30%, what makes competition really strong. At the same time, a population that has a lot to grow because 56% of the concentration of consumption stays in 25% of the population. So imagine when you have the poor people getting into the market and going up in trying to buy products that with a better characteristic or more refined. And in this sense, we observed that a lot back in 2009, 2010. It was a boom of the introduction. In Brazil, we talk about income in class A, B, C, D, E. So the quantity of people from class C, D, E that entered the consumption market. And it's amazing how the country grew. Of course, we are in a difficult moment, like the professor mentioned, but we understand that this is going to go away, and it's going to grow, and we're going to move faster. That's it.
Fantastic.
I think it's good.
Yeah, really interesting. Just specific question from me. Some of the opportunities that have grown in the UK quite fast have been credit-based opportunities. How big is credit as an opportunity in terms of facilitating some of those online sales? Is it big in all of in Brazil? So
Credit?
buying on credit as opposed to actually paying cash, or is that a massive part of it?
The penetration of people who are, we used to say in Portuguese, bancarizado. So people who have access to bank, different from Mexico. We find this completely into. So I would say almost all the companies, and when you see how much is the sale on e-commerce that is done by credit cards, you would find 70 to 80% of the penetration of all the acquisitions or purchases on credit card. Yeah. What is the challenge is the fact that we don't have an interest rate or an inflation that is 1%, 2% per year. We're talking about an inflation of 6% per year, 7% per year. we're talking about a real interest rate of 14.5% per year.
So
And in this sense,
that's hard.
the expectation, because of all the competition we have in the market, the expectation of the consumers are to buy on credit in 5 times, 6 times, 10 times in credit cards, but the financing by the retailers.
Oh, I see.
Not
Right,
they
okay.
pay
Not them.
the interest.
Right, okay.
So bear in mind that this cost goes to the retailers. So in this sense, one of the sentences that I always say in my headquarters in France when I visit them, just give a look that the e-commerce or the retail business in Brazil, especially when you have more durable
Yes.
items, it's not only a mercantile business, it's a
Yes.
mercantile plus financial.
Financial. Yeah, yeah. That's
Just,
really
just
important.
complementing
Yeah.
about the credit cards in Brazil. We have a huge penetration in credit card in Brazil, but one thing that's important to know that there's no international credit card. So to operate, it's better to operate
Got to be
locally.
a local one.
Yes,
Yeah.
because the penetration of international credit card is very low and difficult to sell from here to Brazil
Yeah.
for the massive of our population. So this is an important thing too.
That's
Yeah.
a big issue. Okay, that's brilliant. Really good perspective of what you're dealing with, and I think, as you say, you know, I'm sure a lot of the retailers that we're dealing with here are taking country by country strategies. So it'd be great to do that in those marketplaces. So moving on, maybe to thinking about opportunities now and some of the pitfalls, some of the lessons that we can share. Would anybody like to start in terms of, if you were thinking about market entry into some of the bigger territories, what would you think would be a good way to test market products? Is it marketplaces? Is it what do you think would work as your experience from retailers? Anybody?
And maybe
Yeah,
if I
sure,
could-
sure. Mary.
So as I was saying, 5 years ago, Electrolux had to take a decision to enter this e-commerce world, and Electrolux is actually an industry, so we didn't have know-how, and we had to make a decision how to enter this market. And what we've chosen as a strategy, and which I believe was really successful, it's outsourcing. We have really good suppliers in Brazil, and a few suppliers offer full service. So you don't need to have 10, 12 suppliers for marketing, for product registry, and so on and so forth. So if you find the good suppliers, they help you, and they help you to start. And then once you get to know the market and you get to know what you really want as a strategy, you can start doing it yourself, this kind of activities.
And you're saying some of those outsourcers are quite multifaceted, multi-skilled.
Yes.
So we'd probably find that there's an outsourcer who's specialised in distribution, logistics, warehousing, but some of these go even wider than that?
Exactly.
Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Some of them you even have the full service. Like
So it could
they
be
do everything for you.
Marketing.
Marketing,
and,
except maybe
everything.
pricing.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
everything else they would do. They would do fulfillment, customer.
Just trying to get your microphone back on.
Okay.
Yeah, great.
Customer support. They do everything for you. So this might be a good strategy for the beginning. Another thing that I wanted to point out about Brazil is that it is still very cheap to attract customers. Okay. So buying customers is still very cheap when you start talking about CPC and Google and I mean, if I see your figures here, in Brazil it's way cheaper. Yeah. This is something very good. But about the suppliers that I was saying, just be careful with the suppliers. Some of suppliers, they're just new incomers, and they're surfing on the digital boom in Brazil. So it is very important that you take good care of which suppliers you're gonna hire, because they might not be prepared for the size of your company.
Is there a good source of trying to find out how those, you know, who are the reputable ones and not? Is there somewhere, or do you just have to try and find that out yourself? Which are the best suppliers, the outsourcers?
I think if you talk to the right people, they might already. We know which suppliers are good and which not. So once you start, just talk to consultancy companies, or we're gonna be here, and there's a lot of Brazilians that can help you with that. And
Consultancy companies setting up here.
yeah, so this is something I would really advise everyone to
Okay.
take care. And
Okay.
use local suppliers,
Okay.
because strategy in Brazil it's really, really different than in Europe. So do not try to use local here to trade
to
in,
go
in
trade
Brazil.
over there. Okay. So things like marketplaces. What are the prevalent? What are the marketplaces that are really taking hold? Say Argentina, Mexico, Brazil. What? How are they trading? Are they different in each territory again?
Yes, as we addressed before, no, you have a big marketplace. There's
I'm selling marketplaces like eBay and
yeah, like eBay.
Yeah.
So that works in all Latin America. The biggest is Mercado Libre.
Which one?
Mercado Libre.
Okay. Right.
And it has operations in all Latin America.
Okay.
But still, with Mercado Libre, and also you have some marketplaces of fashion and clothing like Dafiti or Netshoes that operates in more than one country. But even if you are selling in those marketplaces, you need to sell it from their local country.
Right.
You need to have a local operation.
Okay.
And that's very important, you know. And having a local operation is not something that is very expensive. You can do it in any way. I was telling the other day I was explaining what happened with a brand that's called House of Marley. I don't know if you know that brand, but it's an audio brand that is going very well, and they already sell in Argentina and in Chile, you know, but they don't have anyone to represent them, so their sellings were very low. But so they wanted to start selling, and they put an office in Chile. They put two people, but that know the market. From Chile, they were coming to Argentina. And they have an agreement with two retailers, one in Chile and the other one in Argentina. And they did everything together for 6 months. So they give exclusivity, but they did everything together, fulfillment, marketing, etc. And their sales grew from 1 to 10 in 1 month.
Okay.
With two people. So there are lots of opportunities, and you can take the big opportunity, or you can have small steps to test the market and grow.
Well, that's really interesting. Okay. So brand alliances and partnerships as well. That seems as if it's a good opportunity, a good short-term opportunity as well. Yeah. So finding distributors and stuff in local markets. Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing to be really careful about is about the taxes in Brazil. I don't know about Latin America, but Brazil it is kind of complex. You have a lot of taxes. So I also recommend you to talk to suppliers, specialized suppliers in taxes, so they can help you, because there are a lot of good ways to operate in which you will save in taxes.
Yeah. A comment about taxes, talking about operations and supplier operations in Brazil. Taxes is the lead, the strategy in Brazil, because we have some difference with each state. We choose the right state to deliver a product or to hold an operation. So Brazil it's a continental country, so it's very large. We have very big distances and difficult, of course, to deliver products but we have companies in Brazil that know a lot about all these regions. We have transport companies that know every space, each state in Brazil. So we could operate locally very easily, but the taxes is very important to take some company or some suppliers specializing in it to operate locally and to to get a better result.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say that this is one of the differences when you operate, and even, like I mentioned, when we want to talk to European countries or an European headquarter, because normally it's interesting, the discussion when we come to a meeting in my headquarter, the discussions stop at EBITDA. But at the same time, when we want to talk about margin of products, we talk about the categories, the effect mix of channels, mix of categories, and that's how we explain the margin that is bigger or lower.
Right.
And in our case in Brazil, we need to go further.
Yeah.
There is a further step that we need to talk about. How is our logistic footprint? Because depending on where you are, depending on how you organize what he's mentioning about where to receive the products to be distributed, if our suppliers, they can ship to different places, not only to one warehouse.
Yeah.
So what is the logic that one warehouse close to the more density of consumers that we have, so locate a warehouse in São Paulo.
Yeah.
That's the cheapest way
Yeah.
to
So
reach our
close.
biggest market.
But
But
it's
it's a way of losing in your margin maybe 5 to 7%
So it's
points.
a massive
Why?
consideration.
Because
Local
there is
stuff.
some states that they create some difficulties,
Yeah.
and the tax in São Paulo is higher.
It's higher.
And depending on where you where you locate warehouses to receive merchandise, to distribute to e-commerce, or even to physical stores, you are able to earn
Save a lot of
5
margin.
to 7 points in your
And-
margin.
And that can be the,
And this is
the
a lot of
difference
money.
between
It makes
success
you
and
have
failure.
profit or loss
Yeah.
in retail
Yeah, yeah,
because of the very
Absolutely.
tight
Very tight
margins.
margins.
In our case, for example, talking about to have an operation in each country, we are going to have smaller warehouses in different locations in Brazil. It's much better that has one big warehouse in São Paulo, for example. We are going to this direction
Right.
because of taxes and, of course, the cost of the distribution, because
Distribution as well.
we are
Yeah.
near
Yeah.
from our customers, so we are going to this direction.
Yeah.
Right.
You
Okay.
know, like an air conditioning,
Yeah.
it's like this size, right? Okay. Our industry is in Amazon, like up north in the Amazon River. It is cheaper to ship this air conditioning down to São Paulo, invoice it in São Paulo, and ship it back to Amazon if someone wants to buy it there. Then to ship it from Amazon to Amazon. Amazonas, you know, Amazonas
Yeah,
River
yeah,
is in
yeah,
the
yeah.
north.
One
You have
house,
to fly.
yeah.
You have to fly 4 hours to get to São Paulo, or 3 hours or more or less. So that's the distance.
Wow.
And it's cheaper to do this way with the merchandise,
Than to do it.
to do even if you
Even
put the
within-
freight into the account,
Wow.
just because of taxes.
Right. Okay.
So it is very important to have someone that advises you properly in taxes.
And then it's a question of mental model. Some people see this as a threat or a problem. We see it as an advantage or an opportunity.
Yes, right,
It
yeah.
depends on how you
Exactly.
wake up and you see it every day.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's it.
Yeah. Okay.
And people in Brazil, they love everything that comes from abroad.
Right.
They
okay.
love international brands.
Okay.
They love it. So anything that's not made in Brazil, people will love.
Okay.
So you will have a huge advantage.
So maybe put the prices up for that then. Bit of a price premium. Some of the other logistical issues now that we're talking about those. Payments always, local payment is always an issue. It's got to be in local race and whatever. Yeah. Any other learnings on the payment front? Any or fraud or?
Yeah, I was going to say that it's very funny. I was in a presentation of people discussing one extra method of payment for 14 days plus. Yeah. My God, we have so many methods of payment. Yeah. Even something that is a method of payment that is a boleto. We say boleto. So you just, it's a bank invoice. Okay. You print, you go to the bank, you pay
it and then
immediately, yeah. And then many companies, they give in this direct payment, they give sometimes 10% discount because this is cheaper than having a financing in the credit card in 10 times. So, because of the interest rates and the real interest rates. Mm-hmm. So this kind of, like I was saying, people talk about EBITDA, then you have the margin, but below the EBITDA, to discuss the expenses, financial expenses, is extremely important. So we finish our discussion in retail in Brazil in net profit, always. Yeah. Otherwise, you don't know your business.
Well.
And fraud is under control, I would say. You have specialized companies that would analyze credit cards transaction, use them. They're not expensive, but it's really important to use them. Once you use them, fraud is absolutely under control. Okay. People buy online in Brazil because of convenience, also because of price and so on, but also because of convenience. Yes. Imagine traffic everywhere, parking, you have to find a parking space. So this is the two motivations because people mainly buy online. So.
Yeah. One other thing about payments method that is about installments in credit card. Mm. That I know that is different in other countries, but it's very cultural in Brazil. Right. In my company, for example, I think that's more than 9% of our sales. It's in 2 or 3 or 5 installments that customers pay every month in their credit card. So, and that's because the banking invoices is very used because they lost their credit. Yeah. So because they are paying a lot of they buy a lot in a lot of products. So every installments and the credit finished. So they have to start to buy in the other.
It's like that in Germany. Yeah. It's like that in Germany. Yeah.
And I think in Brazil, in the 90s, because of the difficulties, the bank system is very solid. Yeah. What I mean is, if someone stops paying something, that person goes to an organism named Serasa, the name is there, and that person will not buy anywhere. So it means that the tendency, of course, there is a push into having people paying the things on time, so in a proper date. Otherwise, their name goes into the blacklist and they don't buy.
They don't buy, they can't get anything
So this
else.
is very strong. It's different from other countries where you don't have that in that way, in that, that same
That's
way
definitely
of approaching.
similar to Germany, I think.
And then the fraud companies, they talk to this company, and then this is why the blacklist, they work really well. And this is why we can say that fraud is actually under control.
Okay. Chargebacks from e-commerce, they're below 1% in Brazil.
Which is good.
Brazil is a very mature market. It's maybe similar in Chile. Maybe Mexico is the case where fraud is higher because they have lower penetration of credit card. They have high penetration of debit card, which has higher fraud. Yeah. So sometimes in Mexico particularly, it's a big market, but you need to be very careful.
Careful there, Okay. Just trying to think of, is there anything else you'd think from an opportunistic point of view, if you were starting again from scratch, what are the key things you'd think, right, well I would do that or I wouldn't do that? Anything from an opportunity point of view you'd say?
So from my perspective, at least, I don't know, maybe in Brazil it's a more mature market, but in Latin America as a whole, we have a lot stronger penetration in mobile for connecting to internet. So smartphones is a huge thing, but still conversion in smartphones is low. So it's a huge opportunity to gain that conversion, that connectivity into sale, and that's a big opportunity in mobile. Countries like Mexico, even Argentina, I think Brazil as well, we have very strong penetration in smartphones and much bigger than desktops or notebooks.
Yeah.
But still conversion,
low.
they do a lot of research online and purchase
Yeah,
offline
purchase
with
offline.
smartphones, but they just don't buy as much as in desktops.
Yeah.
So that's
So
a huge.
multi-channel in effect, that's in effect multi-channel obviously is basically that is providing the catalogue of product, or if you like, for somebody to go into a store. So at the moment, in terms of, is there much multi-channel development in terms of what we do, click and collect and things like that? Is that starting to take hold now? Yeah?
Yeah, so opportunities, I would say that the omni-channel, the idea of having the physical plus the online purchases, this should be a must. Second opportunity that I see very strong, growing a lot in Brazil, we have the big retailers, and like Amazon, already very strong in US, but we have smaller companies getting into being marketplace, and this, in my view, brings a perspective, a very interesting perspective, that is even cost effective or capital employed effective in terms of how am I going to use the marketplace, not only to be the last mile, let's say, or to increase the number of items you have available in your site, but also as a strategy of composing that in addressing what kind of products am I going to buy myself and having my inventory. What kind of categories in which range of products or prices I'm going to use a marketplace company. That maybe because it's a smaller company, they have different taxations than my company. And then this, of course, will improve me getting a commission that is always good for your bottom line without having the inventory weight that costs money because of the interest rates that are so high. So this kind of analysis is very interesting in terms of a strategic perspective and should be employed. And always in Brazil, in retail, when the grower, the bigger you get, the partnerships with banks are always very interesting as an opportunity. We, FNAC in Brazil, we have a partnership with a financial company named Cetelem. It's the financial for BNP Paribas. And this allows sometimes of someone getting together with you in order to try to improve the sales, and so this is always good opportunity because people need this financing opportunity.
Okay.
About the delivering services also, I think that in Brazil we just start to invest in more to implement new delivery service. The customers are more aggressive about this to ask to have difference because I think that 2 or 3 years ago there's just one service to deliver in 10 days. Just it's now.
Now they demand it.
Now they yes.
Now they demand it.
So the demand is very huge now. So every country, every company are investing to have now we have the Uber truck. We have delivery from bicycles. We have a lot of different and pickup store also. A lot of companies are started to have the service. So this is a very important thing too.
As soon as you've improved expectation, it's hard to go back, isn't it? Everybody, customers just get used to it, and that's what I'm getting. Okay.
In terms of marketplace, we don't have such a strong. Amazon is not that strong yet in Brazil, but we do have a few companies, maybe 3. One is Mercado Libre, the one that Juan mentioned, and they're big portals of e-commerce, and they do also the full service thing I was talking about. So maybe this is also a way to get into Brazil. They can either buy your product and sell it under your name. He would invoice it, obviously, but it would be under your name. But you can also have it under your name, invoice under your name, but he would do all the fulfillment, and it is a marketplace. So this is also maybe interesting to start with and just start touching the country and see if you like it, because they're really well-known companies, they're highly ranked, and they would give you clients like that. So maybe it's also a good strategy to start, especially because they will do fulfillment if you want to.
Okay.
You have to pay for it, but it's one thing less to worry about.
Okay. Just another aspect of localization, we touched on marketing a little bit, but would you say we've talked about some of the differences that you have to make for the different countries. Would you say from a marketing point of view, what an approach you would take in Argentina would be one that you could take in Brazil, or would you really play into the marketing, the tone of voice you'd have to take for your brand, etc., would have to be different for all those different countries?
I think the especially maybe with Brazil, that they even have another language, so it's quite different. But tone of voice and everything, we usually do it different when you want to go local. But lots of the brands that are there, they are global brands and people understand it. Yeah. So even though you have to activate for that consumer, it's very important from my perspective. If I were starting selling products in Latin America, I will kind of control the content, because not all the countries and all the retailers do very well the content. And there's a huge opportunity also in content to drive good content, to start communicating strong with content in social networks. Latin America is has a huge penetration, especially with Facebook in all the countries. Argentina, I think it's the third or fourth country globally of Facebook users. So you have a strong opportunity to drive content and capture leads and customers. And we are not an expert, at least in Argentina and some other countries in Latin America, we are not an expert of creating good stories. I think that's a good opportunity.
At Electrolux, we had institutional website, which existed already and which followed the guidelines of Electrolux globally. Once we came up with the e-commerce website, we saw that the way we talked was absolutely different. And once we changed our website to a more local tone of voice, we started selling more in a way that we now pushing global guys to change the institutional website as well. So yes, I would say from my example that it is very important to change the tone of voice, especially versus Europe.
Yeah.
You know, with some brands like Samsung and LG, for example, when they gave us some leads that have seen their own content, they convert twice or 3 times higher than with our own leads. So that means the consumer is already there to buy because they have seen good content, and then you have the opportunity to.
Okay. Okay. Maybe it's time to open it up to the audience. Any specific questions about any of the countries? Anybody? Gentleman at the front.
Hi. Something that everyone from UK and Europe asks about Brazil and Latin America is how to initiate the operation. And you talk about go-to-market, marketing, logistics, but you need to open a company there. And there is a legend that takes like 6 months, 1 year to open a company in Brazil, in Argentina, in Colombia. So I like to ask you to talk about this. How far a retailer like House of Fraser could have a company in Brazil, in Argentina, in Colombia?
From the Argentina perspective, if you want to start quick, I wouldn't even open the company. I will work first with a local distributor, exclusive, that will bring my products, and I will put some representative there to start working with them, and also with some retailers. But if you want to open a company and have some local representatives, it should take very short period of time. I mean, you can do it quite quickly. You can start selling your products. I mean, really, this case of House of Marley, they came to us, and in 1 month we were launching a huge marketing campaign with them. 1 month, I mean, since they approached us until we started to show the market, and they start selling 10 times higher than they used to, and they did it very quickly. So it's not like you have to start a huge company, at least for Argentina. You can do baby steps, and you can start gaining share with that baby steps quite big. And a huge opportunities. We used to have all the importation closed, but now we're opening, and people are looking for new products and what they are not used to buy in the past. So it's a huge opportunity. I will do it as fast as I can.
And if I'm not mistaken, the companies that, the consultancy companies like PricewaterhouseCoopers and so on and so forth, that does taxing consultancy, they can also advise you to open a company in Brazil. So it's really not that big of an issue.
Okay.
Thanks a lot for the information about opportunities in terms of the size of the market. I didn't really realise it was quite that big. Helpfully, quite a lot of that was in the context of electronics. Now, our business is an electronics one, but it's quite a niche, almost quite a luxury sort of product. We sell recording equipment for creating music at home, synthesizers, keyboards, and that kind of thing. In your experience, how would the market for potentially more luxurious products and less necessary than compared to, say, a light bulb or something like that, how would you say the market for products like that is compared to perhaps more consumer electronics?
I would say in Brazil, you mean, I'm not sure if I got you're saying luxury products.
Yes, so
Okay.
Niche
Okay.
electronics,
No, just
luxury
niche
yeah.
products.
Yeah.
I would say you find it. You find space for that. For example, FNAC in Brazil, our public is much more into a niche population, and it means 23% of my income, annual income, the e-commerce. So you have space for that a lot. And I would say that, like I mentioned, 56% is in the hands of 25% of the population that is class AB, that are the ones that consume. What I would observe, though, is depending on the luxury products, if you want to import instead of producing there, depending on where you import, there are taxation rules that make the price go up very much. And for example, depending on where you buy there, you would pay a lot of money, and probably people wouldn't buy there and would travel and buy it abroad. So, for example, an iPhone, just to give a simple example, an iPhone in Brazil, the new one, the iPhone 7, the price will go to market. If you convert it to a dollar rate, it would be about $1.2 thousand. So if you come to US, you would buy, I don't know here in UK, but in US, you would buy for $700. So probably a person who intends to buy it would travel, is also able to travel abroad and then would buy it. But then the point is, when that person goes back with that person would be obliged to declare this when the person get into the country. What people tend not to do, but if they are caught, then they need to pay 100% of tax if they are caught not declaring it in the entrance. So I would mean that at the end of the day, I'm talking about one cell phone, something you would buy for yourself. But then depending on, you're talking about keyboards and stuff like that, for example, musical equipments, that by the way is one of the categories that abroad in FNAC, they operate with musical instruments in Portugal, Spain, in stores, even in physical stores. We still don't do that in Brazil, for example. But I think from my perspective of my company, it's very interesting, and there would be people to buy. And especially then, the necessity of analysis of strategy is which retailer would you marry to? Or, because at the end, there are some sectors that are still very pulverized, so you don't have a consolidation. Musical instruments is one of these examples, like bookstores. You don't have still in the industry, unlike electronics, that went through a very big movement of consolidation in Brazil back in 2008 and 9. And almost those companies, they went public, blah, blah, blah. So, but in some segments, you still have a lot of different, without a consolidation. I would think that this is good strategy if you want to go and try to search for a better retailer to insert those more niche products.
Talking about import perfumes, it's 3 or 4 times more expensive than here. But even though this is an increasing market, so cosmetics in Brazil is it's the 3rd market now in Brazil and growing in the world too. And even though there's an increasing in that, and yes, there is a niche, and it's a good opportunity there.
Yeah. Because what is the point? Although, like Melanie, she mentioned, Brazilians, they love things that come from abroad. It is true. People would buy this iPhone in my example, or the perfume in his example, and would divide in 10 times in the credit card.
Yeah.
And the retailer would bear the cost of the interest. You understand? And people would like to buy it. And they do it. It's amazing because the mindset, it's not a mindset of the difference in price against abroad. It is the installment that I will pay monthly. Does it fit or not in my budget?
It's the pocket share.
It's the pocket. So this is very interesting. It's the mentality, you understand? And people would do and would buy just to indulge themselves. That's it.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to have to bring it to a close to give you a chance of a coffee. I'm sure these guys will be around if anybody has any other specific questions. But can I thank you very much? It's been really informative information you brought across. So thank you very much and safe travels. Thank you. No problem.